This improved version of the second generation Honda NSX takes the fight to brands like McLaren and Porsche in the junior supercar sector, and, as NSX models always have, goes about the task a little differently. What should a supercar be? We know the European answer to that question, a formula personified by Ferrari, echoed by McLaren, and lightly evolved by the handful of less exotic premium brands who've dared to enter this rarified segment. What you get in each case is a race car for the road. What you need, says Honda, is this, their second generation NSX, first launched in 2015, then upgraded 3 years on to create the lightly updated car that we're going to look at here. The NSX name may resonate because the earlier generation of this model, launched back in 1989, had such a profound effect on its sector. Here was an exclusive junior supercar as focused as any Porsche or Ferrari, but a machine that could be as undemanding to own and drive as a Civic. The letters stood for New Sports Car Experimental, and when Honda experiments, the automotive world sits up and takes notice. They certainly did with that early NSX. The styling was inspired by an F-16 fighter jet, and the selling price was pretty much half the cost of the comparable Maranello product of that era, a Ferrari 348. Famously too, the chassis was developed with the help of Ayrton Senna, but crucially, you didn't need his talent to really enjoy it. We'd never seen a supercar quite like that, a machine an ordinary driver could take near to the limit on the road without frightening and possibly dangerous consequences. A car that wasn't awkward to drive in town or worrying in the wet. Small wonder that the original NA1 series model stayed in production until 2005. Honda subsequently readying a V10 engined replacement that was supposed to celebrate the success of the brand's return to Formula One. It didn't happen. The F1 team floundered and fell victim to the period's worldwide recession, as did the replacement NSX. And that might have been that, had it not been for a dedicated band of enthusiasts within the company who refused to let this model line die. Finally, the Japanese management relented, and a small team from the brand's American Acura division were tasked with reinterpreting what the new sports car experimental concept should mean for the modern era. This was their response. Launched in 2015, then, as we said earlier, lightly updated in mid-2018 to create the car that we're going to test here, this NC1 series model is as different from its market contemporaries as its predecessor was from the competition back in the 90s. The whole original concept behind this second generation model lay in the way that it could take the hybrid performance technology that we saw on £750,000 hypercars like McLaren's P1, the Ferrari LaFerrari and the Porsche 918 Spider, and make it available for Porsche 911 turbo money. As part of that, there are no fewer than 4 motors on offer, a 3-litre V6 twin-turbo boosted by an electric motor, together powering the wheels out back, with the sport hybrid all-wheel drive system completed by 2 further motors powering the wheels up front. This NSX can start and creep briefly on all-electric power. It can flash to 62 miles an hour in under 3 seconds. It can reach nearly 200 miles an hour flat out, and it's everyday usable enough to feel quite suitable if all you actually need it to do is to collect your dry cleaning. This, in Honda's words, is what an everyday supercar should be. And with this revised model, an extra layer of driving involvement has been added too. Sounds promising. Let's test it. This Japanese supercar claims to have been revitalised in terms of its driving dynamics. We'll get to that, but first, if you're new to the NSX, it'll be necessary to get your head around exactly what's on offer here. what precisely are we to make of it? An electrified supercar with a battery providing electricity to two small motors driving the front wheels, as well as also to a larger one at the back that assists a big 3.5 litre V6 powering the rear axle, which makes this a four-wheel drive hybrid powered by four motors. Yes, really. Continuing with the futuristic technology, the brakes aren't actually connected to anything. The big pads are activated virtually, and the e-steering works in much the same manner. If, as a committed driving enthusiast, you're seeking an ultimately involving junior supercar, it might not sound too promising a recipe. Honda, though, begs to differ. With this second generation NSX, they set out to reimagine what a machine of this kind could be, and package into it a Senna-style dose of pioneering spirit. Which means, well, what? Well, we're about to find out. Fire the starter, and the engine kicks into life with a snarl that's rich and potent, but some way from the guttural blare that you get from a McLaren or a 911, or the highly strung wail that you'd hear from a Maranello V8. Perhaps that's appropriate given that brawn here is provided by battery as well as by braked horses. There are of course plenty of those generated by the 3.5 litre V6 out back, which is largely unchanged in this revised model. The combustion element of this power plant puts out 500 brake horsepower, plus a further 73 horsepower is contributed by the combined efforts of the three electric motors we mentioned earlier. The one at the back, the so-called direct drive motor, which is wedged between this twin turbocharged engine and its 9-speed dual clutch automatic gearbox, acts as both a flywheel and a starter motor. Up front, meanwhile, lie the two further 38 horsepower motors that together create this car's TMU twin motor unit, there to drive the front wheels, provide torque vectoring for extra cornering traction, and complete the operation of this car's sport hybrid all-wheel drive system. The TMU also recovers braking energy during deceleration to supply power to the hybrid batteries. You can't actually hear the various electric motors, but when you flatten the throttle, you can watch their effect on this Honda's uninterrupted stream of power via a provided assist charge gauge to the left of the rev counter. This rises and falls as the direct drive motor and the twin motor unit work together to deliver an electrified boost that smooths over the slight reductions in torque that you'd otherwise find in the upper and lower parts of the rev range. All rival supercars at this price point are frantically fast, but the torque's not always delivered instantly at low engine speeds in low gears in the way that it can be here. Floor the throttle in almost any ratio and 645 newton meters of it thrusts you towards the horizon with a throaty roar as you near the 7,500 rev limit, and the kind of urgency you might expect from something even more powerful. Something like a Ferrari 488? Maybe not quite. That's a much pricier lighter car with 100 horsepower more, but this NSX gets closer to the performance potential of that Maranello model than we'd ever expected it might. Of course, as usual with a machine of this kind, you can dial in various degrees of excitement with different drive settings. These marshalled here by this large silver rotary dial, which controls this Honda's integrated dynamic system. Quiet mode is your starting point, in which setting you can leave home in early mornings without waking everyone up, as the hybrid system does its best to remain silently electrified for as long as possible. Before very long, the engine chimes in, of course, but with a muted note that's 25 decibels down on what's delivered by the more sensational settings. Ease the dial to the right and you'll find three of these. Sport adds a gravelly rumble to the engine note and sharpens acceleration. You'll probably, though, go straight to Sport Plus, which turns the throttle and transmission maps up a further notch, while simultaneously stiffening the magnetorological adaptive dampers and putting the yaw control into a more aggressive mode that'll cut stability system interference without leaving you bereft of assistance should you need it. The final option is Track, which you won't be able to resist playing with because it dials oral excitement via the active exhaust valve and intake sound control systems up to the max, and it's the mode that you'll need to activate launch control. Easily the most effective setup of its kind we've ever tried. It simply hurls you away from rest, 62 miles an hour flashing by in 2.9 seconds, a figure that in this segment only Porsche's 911 Turbo S can match. Unlike obvious rivals, the top speed doesn't also begin with a 2, but if you're fortunate enough to find somewhere you can achieve the quoted flat-out 191 mile an hour limit, it's unlikely that you'll care very much. That maximum's no doubt slightly hampered by the inevitably prodigious weight that tends to afflict any car that mates electrical output with a turbocharged combustion engine. Here, that leaves this Honda tipping the scales at nearly 1.8 tonnes, making it around 500 kilograms heavier than a rival McLaren 570S. You'd expect a more significant effect of this to be a reduction in cornering agility, but attack a set of twisting turns and you feel nothing of the sort. The amount of speed the Sport hybrid all-wheel drive system allows you to carry through the bends is astonishing, with corner exit speed especially remarkable thanks to that torque vectoring twin motor unit on the front axle. This whole SH-AWD setup was recalibrated as part of changes made to this revised model, as were the settings of the adaptive dampers, which feel brilliantly judged in the way they feel purposefully compliant over bumps and racetrack curbs. Plus, as part of those improvements, larger front and rear anti-roll stabilising bars were added, increasing stiffness by 26% at the front and by 19% at the rear. The rear hubs and control arm toe link bushings were also stiffened, and grippier Continental Sport Contact 6 high-performance tyres added to the standard spec. All of this further boosting responsiveness through the chassis, to the point that Honda claim the enhanced version of this car to be 2 seconds quicker a lap round its famous Suzuka Grand Prix circuit. Yet in extremis, all of this performance is delivered without the faintly frightening feel you might experience when trying the same thing in a comparable McLaren or Ferrari. Others describe this as a feeling of somehow being kept slightly at arm's length by all the technology, but we'd take this Honda's composed confidence any day over anything in this segment bar a Porsche 911. As for the e-steering and e-braking systems we mentioned earlier, well, they managed to be pretty 911-like too. Feelsome and powerfully responsive, the steering in particular, a useful improvement in the recalibrated form that features with this revised car. And both steering and stopping systems feel natural. If no one told you of the lack of hydraulic assistance with either setup, you'd never guess it. Plus, we love the way this car has been designed to be so easy to see out of and manoeuvre. This attributes just as well given this Honda's vast, near 2-metre width, and it's one that tends to encourage you to use it on mundane urban trips that would probably see more exotic rivals left in the garage. Inevitably, there are of course things you probably won't like and others that you'll have to adjust to. The buttons for the 9DCT auto gearbox fall into the latter category, but you'll quickly get used to them. Not so these steering wheel paddle shifters, which feel horrible and click through the ratios with the kind of artificial tactility you'd get from a 90s PlayStation, which is unfortunate since in the manual transmission mode you'll probably want to often use, you'll find yourself using them an awful lot. So closely stacked are the 7 speeds that lie between the initial launch-off ratio and the 9th one reserved for highway cruising. The lack of functionality allowing you to customize your own settings for the integrated dynamic system driving mode setup is an oversight you wouldn't find in direct competitors. And it's also annoying that Honda has specified this car with an extremely low ride height, yet neglected to also give it the kind of optional ride lift feature that helps so much on ramped driveways, potholes and over speed humps in a rival McLaren. Ultimately though, none of this will really matter if the other virtues of this NSX enthrall you to the extent that they've charmed us. Don't think of it as an expensive Honda, think of it instead as a cut-priced hybrid hypercar, because that's what it is. Cutting-edge technology is rarely characterfully creative, but here Honda has made it so, and in consequence created a memorable machine. It's an established mark of supercar styling that every exterior element should serve a distinct purpose. That's certainly the case here, as part of what designer Michelle Christensen calls the interwoven dynamic approach to this sleek silhouette. She's the first woman to have been given the lead styling job on a car of this kind, and her work here is striking and attractive, though also visibly influenced by the Ferrari 458 and Audi R8 models that Honda purchased to inspire the NSX project team. Visual changes to this post-2018 revised Mark II model are very small indeed. The chrome finish of the upper front grille surround has been colour matched to the bodywork, while a smarter gloss black finish has been applied to the mesh in the front and rear bumpers. There's the additional choice of orange calipers for the optional carbon ceramic brake discs, and the colour palette benefits from the addition of this striking thermal orange pearlescent paint colour. That's about it. Otherwise, the design recipe here is exactly as it was when this second generation NC1 series model was first launched back in 2015. The brief given to this car's creators was certainly challenging. An exotic look, a recognisably Honda feel, everyday usability and a clear link to NSX lineage. But it was appealingly interpreted here in a manner even lower and wider than that of the car many might see as this one's closest rival, the McLaren 570S. The various dramatic vents, veins and creases must manage airflow over the hand-finished panels in a way that's not only aerodynamic, but which must also somehow contrive to cool no fewer than 7 different heat sources: the 3.5-litre V6 engine, 2 turbochargers, the dual clutch transmission, the power distribution unit and the 2 motors within the front twin motor unit. 10 different heat exchangers are needed to service all these areas, and many of them are found here at the front. Even these distinctive multi-LED headlights are bisected by mesh-covered air inlets, each lamp unit containing 6 individual LEDs in a narrow slash that flows smoothly into the tapered front grille that creates an aggressive interpretation of Honda's now familiar family face. And inevitably, more vents feature in the acutely angled sculpted aluminium bonnet. As with the original 90s NA1 series NSX, aluminium is a key structural component, though with this second generation car, other fundamentals also feature. Composite plastic is used as part of the mixed materials space frame. Plus there's a carbon fibre floor and A-pillars fashioned from steel so that they can be narrower. In profile, you better appreciate the way that the bonnet line, roof line, floating C-pillars and rear quarter appear as one distinctive and unified curve. It all combines with remarkably short front and rear overhangs to create a sleek yet muscular overall stance that properly conveys the required sense of purpose and power. The large yet lightweight high-performance wheel and tyre package fits within the arches with minimal gaps to highlight the taut proportions. 19-inch rims feature at the front with 20 inches at the rear, both shod with grippy Continental Sport Contact 6 performance rubber, specifically developed for this revised Mark II model. The rear styling's equally striking, most notably for the way that those signature floating C-pillars cascade gently from the roofline to a point just forward of this integrated spoiler, an attachment that on most rival models would electrically activate at high speeds. Here it doesn't need to. The combination of the wind tunnel sculpted bodywork and this intricate lower diffuser already enough to deliver 3 times as much downforce to the rear as is needed at the front, which in Honda's view is the optimal balance for high performance and day-to-day driving. The rear window glass showcases the engine in a fashion now usual in supercar circles. The 3.5-litre twin turbo displayed at the glorious 75-degree bank angle that references past Honda racing programs. Its twin turbochargers set outside the V in order to keep the centre of gravity lower. And to remind you just how unusual and unique this car is, there's a bespoke build plaque, a precision crafted by Performance Manufacturing Centre, that being Honda's American Marysville plant in Ohio. It reminds you that this US-conceived creation is now as much an American product as a Japanese one. Okay, time to take a seat inside. There are no gullwing-style dihedral doors of the sort favoured by McLaren, just conventional ones you open with pop-out sticks of the sort found on Aston Martins. And they pull back to reveal a cockpit that's lower slung than a 911, but one certainly easier to access than that of a competing Ferrari or McLaren. The cabin design doesn't share much with European rivals either, apart from the way that this large centre transmission tunnel flows between the seats into the centre console. It certainly feels like a place designed to do business with the road. The focus appropriately centred on this magnesium-fashioned wheel that shares shaping, though not exotic finishing, with a Ferrari 488. Now, through it, you view a driver-focused 8-inch TFT digital display, dominated by a central rev counter incorporating a digital speed readout. Flanking this gauge are 2 digital charge meters, reminding you of this Honda's electrified remit, with that for the main battery on the right, with the left-hand one briefing you on the Sport Hybrid system's current rate of assist charge. As you can see, there's no conventional gear stick, just this McLaren-style narrow centre console strip incorporating gear change buttons and the electronic handbrake, collectively a setup you'll quickly adjust to. All of this works pretty well, but quite a few of the materials used to trim this layout feel decidedly low rent by premium supercar standards, particularly the silvered plastic that the design team seem to have been so fond of, also used on these horribly cheap feeling gear shift paddles. Having said that, this cabin feels decidedly sturdier and better built than rival cockpits in this sector, and crucially in our view, it's also easier to see out of than anything in the class bar the more upright Porsche 911 Turbo S. Few changes were made to this cabin as part of the upgrades back in 2018, just this new indigo blue shade of trim for the Alcantara and leather upholstery combination. Or if you're opting for full leather, there's a full red option. Now the change is enough to give the interior the kind of really exotic carbon trimmed feel that you get with some rivals in this segment, but this cabin delivers something much more important, ergonomics that make you feel much more comfortable and confident at the wheel than you'd expect to be in a supercar. Little things contribute here, the narrow A-pillars that we mentioned earlier, the relatively glassy side profile, and the way the dash has been lowered to improve the view ahead. All of it makes a small but significant difference to all-round visibility, though it still doesn't excuse the lack of standard parking sensors. You do get a rear view camera though. In terms of stuff you won't appreciate quite so much, well, pretty much everyone who's tested this car has disparaged this 7-inch centre dash Honda Connect colour touchscreen, and it's easy to see why. Though Ferrari never seems to get much criticism for borrowing similarly cheap-feeling systems from Fiats and Alfas. Given the low-volume nature of this car, it was a bit much to expect that the Japanese brand should have developed a specific NSX infotainment setup, but they could perhaps have repackaged this one so that it wasn't quite as obviously borrowed from a Civic. Dated graphics and slow response times characterise the Connect package, and rather unforgivably in this segment of the market, it doesn't include navigation unless you pay extra, though you do get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone mirroring, and there's the option of a bespoke 9-speaker 580-watt ELS Studio Premium audio system created in association with the award-winning recording engineer and producer Elliot Shiner. Thankfully, the main climate controls are separated off below this display, though you do still have to operate the fan speed via the screen. Just below it sits a large silver dial you might initially think might control this monitor, so that you don't have to stab away at its touchscreen functionality or master the intricacies of voice activation. This, though, turns out to be a driving mode dial, there to enable you to flip through the customizable dynamic and auditory elements of the driving experience. In the car's initial quiet mode, the instrument binnacle display glows a cool blue. Switch the controller to Sport and it takes on a grey hue with red highlights. Finally, in Sport Plus and Track modes, the rev counter adopts a yellow hue with red highlights, and the rev counter rotates to place its lower and upper limits in more track-focused 6 o'clock and 3 o'clock positions. Surprisingly, you'll search in vain amongst these screens and modes for the kind of stopwatch function that normally is more or less mandatory on a car of this kind, which is odd given the extent to which Honda expects likely owners to use their cars on track. Even the headrest of the seat structure is designed to accommodate a helmet. Less surprising is the lack of interior storage, though that hardly fits with this model's stated everyday usable remit. There are no door bins or cup holders, and the glove box, which incorporates a USB port, is small. You don't get vanity mirrors in the sun visors or any overhead compartment for your sunglasses either. The small recesses in the doors and on the side of the transmission tunnel aren't good for much, but you do get a trinket tray behind the central gear selector panel, and behind that a lidded ledged box with USB and HDMI points. What else? Well, various data functions can be delivered via this little wheel on the right-hand steering spoke. Things like a compass, tyre pressure, maintenance info, fuel consumption, range and oil levels. And one thing that we do like about the Connect centre dash screen is the way it can audibly read text messages and emails for you before allowing you to reply with preset responses like, "Talk to you later, I'm driving." There's also access to Google Maps, Google Now and Google Play Music too, along with a variety of popular third-party Android-compatible music apps and a wide array of sports, financial, weather and media information apps. We ought also to mention the spaciousness of this cabin. If you thought you might struggle to fit in a supercar, either due to height or weight, then don't worry, you'll have no problem with this one. One advantage of this design's prodigious width comes with the amount of cabin shoulder room on offer, and there's enough headspace for someone comfortably over 6 foot in height. It's a pity there's no seat height adjustment, but there's plenty of scope for altering steering angle, and it's easily possible to align yourself comfortably with the pedals without the need to contort your legs at awkward angles. What you don't get are the useful extra little rear seats that a rival 911 Turbo or Aston Martin DB11 would offer for designer shopping bags or short trips with kids. There isn't even the restrictive sliver of storage space behind the seat backs that most two-door rivals give you. Just behind the headrests, a 12mm thick slab of glass, the thickest used in any Honda production car, separates the cockpit from the engine compartment. It's there because the brand wants you to hear cabin sound that's piped in through the stereo speakers and dual overhead microphones, rather than the guttural note of the V6 power plant itself. Perhaps that's one reason why the aural fireworks on offer here aren't quite as thrilling as perhaps they could be. Finally, let's take a look in what we should call the trunk, this being primarily an American sports car. No, not the frunk. Boot space in a rival Porsche or McLaren model would be found beneath the bonnet, but the twin motor unit up front in an NSX means that there's no room for that here. So luggage space in this Honda must be traditionally situated at the back. There's 110 litres of it, which doesn't sound very much, and isn't, though to be fair, rivals don't give you very much more, despite the fact that they don't have to package in all the hybrid systems provided here. The boot is much wider than it at first appears, wide enough in fact to swallow the full-size set of golf clubs that the Japanese maker insists will somehow fit. These will though be lightly sautéed on your way to the links, thanks to heat dissipation that comes partly from the big engine ahead, but mainly from the 9-speed dual-clutch gearbox that causes this awkward hump in the boot floor. Small straps are provided just inside the boot lip, but otherwise there's nothing to keep small items in place. Think in terms of this area swallowing a couple of small suitcases and a squashy bag, and then pack accordingly. Honda asks around £150,000 for NSX ownership and sells it via only 2 of its UK dealerships, both London-based in either Chiswick or Hendon. That's if you can get one. This car is imported in tiny numbers. In fact, in terms of rarity, it makes something like an Audi R8 look like a Fiesta. This Honda's hand-built using cutting-edge powertrain technology, and of course you pay for that. In fact, as we'll see in a minute, you'll almost certainly be spending quite a lot more than the sticker price by the time you take delivery. But then that's pretty much par for the course in this segment. Rumours abound of roadster convertible body styles and an even more focused Type R version, but at the time of this test, the autumn of 2020, just this single coupe variant was being offered with a combined system output of 573 horsepower. As for rivals, well, just what do you compare this Honda to? In a moment, we'll get to similarly priced competitors in this segment that deliver the same kind of performance through more conventional engineering. But the cutting-edge hybrid technology that's on offer here can't be had anywhere else in this sector in quite the same way. It's based on the engineering used by long since discontinued £750,000 hypercars like McLaren's P1, the Ferrari LaFerrari, and the Porsche 918 Spyder. In the far more attainable junior supercar segment this Honda is priced to compete in, the only other car that uses hybrid power is BMW's now discontinued i8. When on sale, that car cost over £30,000 less than this one, but used a very different plug-in setup, putting out nearly 40% less power. But let's get to those more conventionally engineered direct rivals, the 2 most obvious ones being McLaren's 570S, which costs about the same as an NSX, and Porsche's 911 Turbo S, which costs around £5,000 more. Both cars deliver very similar levels of performance to this Honda. The McLaren feels more exotic but is less well built, and its low-slung, more temperamental demeanour makes it less day-to-day usable. The Porsche is the polar opposite, the kind of car you could commute in and leave in a public car park without being unduly bothered, but also a car rather too similar in many eyes to humbler 911 variants costing half as much. Many will feel, as we do, that this NSX strikes a very good balance between these 2 extremes. What about the other options you could consider? If you're prepared to consider a Honda in this segment, there's certainly no reason why you shouldn't also consider an Audi. The Ingolstadt brand's similarly powerful R8 V10 Performance Coupe will save you around £8,500 over an NSX, but doesn't even feature turbo power, let alone hybrid technology, so it won't appeal to the kind of technophile who'll simply love the idea of this Honda. A slightly more sophisticated, more exotic feeling choice is the V8 version of Aston Martin's DB11, which costs only around £2,000 less than an NSX, but is around 70 horsepower down and really more of a GT than an out-and-out junior supercar. The same is true of Bentley's Continental GT, which in W12 form will cost you around £7,000 more. And that's about it. Maserati can't really field anything in the same league, and the closest comparable Ferrari, the 488 Pisa, will cost you around £100,000 more, yet goes no faster. If, having considered all of this, you conclude that it is an NSX that you really, really want, then you're going to need to be of an understanding nature when it comes to the spec sheet. Is it really acceptable on a £150,000 supercar to make buyers pay extra for parking sensors and navigation? Surely not. On the plus side, the centre dash infotainment screen does include a rear view camera and smartphone mirroring via Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, plus Bluetooth of course, along with access to various Google-powered features and a wide range of third-party apps. In addition, via this monitor, you'll activate a high-quality audio system, and grippy sports seats are provided, finished in Milano leather and Alcantara, though they're only manually adjustable unless you pay extra. And you get dual-zone climate control incorporating a Micron air filtration system that's capable of filtering away particles as small as 0.3 microns. As you'd expect, there's a set of full LED headlamps with the same technology also used for the daytime running lights and the tail lamps. Honda includes an active exhaust valve system with active sound control too, so there's no need for the pricey optional sports exhaust of the kind that competitors offer. And of course, you get the full engineering package as standard, including a sport hybrid all-wheel drive, a 9DCT paddle shift dual clutch auto gearbox, and active magnetorheological adaptive dampers. There's also a mechanical limited slip differential, a high-performance Brembo braking setup, launch control, and an integrated dynamic system with selectable driving modes, the Quiet, Sport, Sport Plus and Track settings that we briefed you on elsewhere in this film. A carbon roof is standard, as is an exterior sport package incorporating a matte black front spoiler, a special rear diffuser and side sills plus a bright chromed exhaust finisher. And you get what the brand calls exclusive interwoven wheels, 19 inches at the front with 20 inches at the back. All rims able to be specified with your choice of either machined, painted or polished finishes. Also included is what Honda calls its signature interior sport package, which gives you a leather-wrapped steering wheel and Alcantara-trimmed instrument binnacle and black pedals. On to options. It's appropriate to start with driving stuff. Actually, there isn't much, just the pricey carbon ceramic disc braking system that'll set you back a cool £8,400. Whatever your choice of brake setup, you can have the calipers finished in either red, silver or black. And as part of the changes made to this revised version of the Mark II model, Honda added the extra orange shade we have here. Talking of colours, unless you want your NSX's aluminium panels finished in the three standard solid shades on offer, Bellina Black, Curva Red or the evocatively named 130R White, you'll be needing to pay your Honda dealer extra for the exterior paintwork. Possibly you might want a metallic finish, Source Silver or Nord Grey, or maybe the casino white, or as in this case, thermal orange pearlescent shades. Or you could pay even more for exclusive Andaro paint, available in either Valencia red or in Nouvelle blue. Many NSX owners want the further embellishment of the optional carbon fibre exterior sport package that we have here, which gives you carbon fibre for the front spoiler, the rear diffuser and the side sills, plus a dark chrome exhaust finisher. Here we've also got the optional carbon fibre rear spoiler and optional carbon fibre engine cover. Diamond cut blade style alloy wheels can also be specified, and we'd want to protect it all with the optional lycra fleece lined stitched car cover. As for interior options, well, as you'd expect in the supercar segment, you can add more carbon fibre. That material featuring as part of an optional interior sport package, which sees it coating parts of the steering wheel and the instrument binnacle, plus that pack also gives you an aluminium finish for the footrests and the sport pedals. We've got that fitted here, plus the optional black Alcantara headliner. And you'll probably want to upgrade the leather and Alcantara seats with power adjustment, in which case you can have them finished in ebony, orchid, saddle, red, or as in this case, indigo blue, the latter colour added as part of the changes made to this revised model. Or you could go the whole hog and get power assisted chairs that are trimmed in the softer semi-aniline leather that we have here, in which case they can be finished in ebony, orchid or red. Again, that latter colour is one added as part of the changes made to this revised model. Finally, it's unlikely that any NSX would ever be delivered without the £1,700 extra technology package that gives you Garmin navigation, an ELS premium 9-speaker audio system and all-round parking sensors. Yes, you have to pay extra for navigation and parking sensors on a £150,000 supercar. We think it's appalling too. Let's finish with a look at safety. We've criticised other supercar makers for failing to include camera-driven safety kit features like autonomous braking on their cars, and we're equally disappointed to find that sort of thing lacking here. Why should the Honda sensing package of camera-driven safety elements that you get on a Civic not be offered here? It's simply unacceptable. You can't even specify adaptive cruise control, which is just as bewildering an omission given the long distance driving that many owners might engage in. Now, of course, you do get plenty of more conventional stuff, including a tyre pressure monitoring system with location and pressure indicators, and particularly clever VSA vehicle stability assist with traction control setup. This constantly monitors key dynamic parameters and driver inputs such as steering angle, throttle position, yaw rate, lateral g-force, vehicle speed and individual wheel speeds. If oversteer or understeer is recognised, the VSA system, working in conjunction with the Sport Hybrid all-wheel drive layout and the power unit, is able to instantaneously redirect torque and invoke the ABS braking system at each wheel as needed to help stabilise your NSX. The system also increases traction and reduces wheel spin when there's reduced grip, such as in wet, icy or snowy conditions. If none of this is enough to prevent you from having an accident, you'll be glad of the way that this car's advanced multi-material body design effectively manages energy in a collision, minimising cabin intrusion and mitigating occupant injury. Ablation cast nodes in the aluminium structure have been fitted at key junctions within the front of the car's space frame to help optimise impact protection. And to guard against fire in a rear-end collision, there's a special twin tank design for fuel storage, which packages the two tanks in the safest position possible. That's between the rear firewall and the power unit, and shrouds them with a coat of specialist resin. Standard primary and supplemental restraint systems include single-stage driver and dual-stage passenger multiple threshold front airbags. Plus there's a driver knee airbag along with so-called smart vent side airbags, side curtain airbags with a rollover sensor and 3-point seat belts with load-limited automatic tensioning. If the promise of hybrid technology leaves you supposing that this is some kind of eco-supercar in the mould of, say, a BMW i8, then you're likely to be disappointed. Unlike the i8, this NSX isn't a plug-in product, and its hybrid system's small 1 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery is primarily designed to aid performance rather than efficiency. Still, you feel quite green-minded, creeping silently from your driveway with the integrated dynamic system set in its electrified quiet mode. And it's certainly true that this Honda enjoys a small fuel and CO2 statistical advantage over some conventionally engined rivals. Let's get to the WLTP rated figures. Officially, this NSX is supposed to return 26.4 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 242 grams per kilometre of CO2. To give you some class perspective, a rival McLaren 570S manages 23.2 miles to the gallon and 276 grams per kilometre, while a Porsche 911 Turbo S manages up to 23.5 miles to the gallon and 271 grams per kilometre. The fact that this hybrid NSX model's efficiency advantage is either slender or non-existent over conventionally engined rivals is perhaps to be expected, in the same way that the performance advantage of those extra motors is to quite a large extent negated by the extra weight they bring. So it is with frugality and emissions. Despite its structure's considerable use of aluminium and composite plastic, with all its associated and complicated systems, this Honda tips the scales at a hefty 1.8 tonnes, half a tonne more than that rival McLaren we just mentioned. You need an awful lot of technological cleverness to overcome that. There is quite a lot of that though. A dual variable valve timing control system reduces the amount of exhaust gas recirculation, reducing tailpipe emissions that are further optimized by lean burn combustion technology and a combination of both direct and port fuel injection systems. There's even Honda's idle stop engine start-stop system in quiet and sport modes anyway. And the 9 DCT dual clutch transmission and EPS electrical steering both also aid efficiency, as does the sophisticated regeneration system that replenishes the battery to the accompaniment of a faint whine from the front motors as they switch into generator mode. Powertrain improvements made to this updated model include upgraded injectors, enhancement to the heat response of the turbocharger, and a new particulate filter to ensure that the NSX complies with the Euro 6D temp emission standards. Of course, when it comes to any sort of supercar, quoted efficiency readings are never particularly relevant, either to the priorities of potential owners or to the returns you're actually likely to get in real-world motoring. Any model of this sort will struggle to reach a 2-figure fuel return when it's being thrashed about or driven hard on track, and this one's no different. An info trip section of the Center Dash Connect touchscreen has a history of trip section that can show you just how far from the officially quoted fuel readings your last 4 journeys have taken you. And of course, there are additional screens that brief you on average economy and range. It'd be nice to also have an active Synergy Drive style Prius-like display showing what's being powered by what at any given time, but Honda presumably thinks that to be contrary to the performance priorities being showcased here. Service intervals are determined by the car's own SVRS service reminder system, readouts for which you'll find on the instrument cluster display and the Center Dash Connect screen. Maintenance is taken care of by the 2 UK London Honda dealerships in Hendon and Chiswick that specialise in NSX sales in our market. They'll collect and deliver the car for you by trailer. Remember to allow more for consumables like brake pads and tyres if you're going to be indulging in circuit events. The Continental Sport Contact 6 rubber will be extremely expensive to replace, so bear that in mind before you go track day showboating. Insurance is of course a top of the shop Group 50, and the warranty is the usual 3-year 90,000 mile Honda deal, which is a bit better than most rivals who tend to offer guarantees limited to 60,000 miles. This segment is full of compelling supercars, but this NSX offers something a little different, just as its predecessor did. There's so much technology in the hybrid drivetrain that this model might easily have become something of an engineering exercise rather than a raw, involving super sports car. That this hasn't happened is due to the fact that it's clearly been developed by people who love their driving. A team who bought themselves just about every desirable rival they could lay their hands on, then tuned each NSX element to try and make this Honda just that little bit better in every area. Must have been fun. Drive the end result and you'll find out just how much. We've done just that and found that the small but welcome updates made here, the tweaked dampers, the upgraded anti-roll bars, the revised suspension, the sharper steering, the stickier tyres, all of it's made the NSX experience just that little bit more immersive. Which might be persuasive to a supercar buyer who might admire this car's hybrid tech but be ultimately unconvinced as to whether it was actually really needed. The electrification, after all, doesn't make this Honda especially efficient, and without it, you'd get a weight saving of around 300 kilograms that would probably give you back most of the extra performance that electrification delivers. But this Honda needed something to make it stand out. Delivering hybrid hypertech for entry-level supercar money certainly allows it to do just that. It's a machine that's greater than the sum of its parts, a pioneering contender in this class that's seen its creator once again pushing boundaries. Like the original 90s NSX, this modern era design reinterprets what a supercar can be and delivers it with everyday usability that few competitors can match. It's unconventional, it's divisive, and it defines the spirit of its brand in a way that continues to charm us completely.